Good evening, everybody, especially our esteemed veterans and our esteemed panelists. I, on behalf of Colonel Sharad Awasthi, mentor of Military Literature and Cultural Festival Foundation, welcome you to the 13th session of the Military Literature Festival, Lucknow. Today is the first of three successive sessions we have planned with veteran panelists. On 6th of November, we'll have a session on solo adventure and extreme sports. And on 7th, we have two very interesting veterans talking about their thriller novels and much more, one from Pune and one from France. Then we wind up for the year with the exception of a live program on 22nd November, a Dastan Goi on 1971 war in Lucknow style, which we will be doing along with Headquarters Central Command. Veterans are truly a gold mine for nation building. Perhaps one of the greatest trained assets with much talent, experience, and resolve of working against oddities. Today, we will share just a glimpse of it and talk about veterans based on the very interesting book written by Colonel Sidhu, Success from Being Mad. The session will be moderated by Rajagopal Tampi. Tampi combines the experience of being a veteran, corporate executive, and entrepreneur. An alumni of National Defense Academy and an M.Tech in computer sciences from IIT Mumbai, he was responsible for induction of a number of high-value training simulators in the Navy. He has commissioned a new Indian naval warship in South Korea as its electrical officer. In his last appointment as a captain, he was India's defense advisor in Nigeria and Ghana. He chose to leave the services to pursue his passion in the information technology. He has worked with Tata Infotech, Mastech in global CKO roles. As an entrepreneur, he founded Value Moves Private Limited Company, a very early technology leader on SaaS, HRMS, and HRMS product company with a large customer base. He's now an investor, a mentor, and a director in a startup. He thrives on critically building value. He's also a golfer and happens to be my course mate. He will be talking to the author, Colonel Rakesh Sidhu, and other veterans, Naresh Bana, Sam, and General Lalhotra. Over to Tampi.
Thank you very much, Hemant, for that kind introduction. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Session designed to highlight the successes of veterans in civilian life. This session is about veterans transitioning to entrepreneurship. Here is my favorite definition of an entrepreneur. Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round holes in the square, the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things differently. They are not fond of rules and they have no status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify them, or vilify them. About the only thing you can't do is ignore them because they change things. They push the human race forward. And while some may see them as crazy ones, we see genius because the people crazy enough to think that they can change the world are the ones who do. Now, it is my proud privilege to introduce our plethora of such glittering, successful veterans from amongst us. They have made significant contribution to nation building, education, and social upliftment. Paucity of time, I will just say that each one of our guests is a #1 performer and topper in their respective fields. They have made huge sacrifices to build their businesses. Colonel R.S. Sidhu served in the Indian Army in mechanized infantry battalions and was awarded the Sena Medal for gallantry. Post-retirement, he has worked in education, hospitality, corporate life skills, and leadership training sectors. His wonderful book, Success from Being Mad, sets the mood for this session. In his eminently readable book, Colonel Sidhu has analyzed the lives of 10 veterans who are successful in life. It is a must read, particularly for veterans who are planning to become entrepreneurs. Welcome, Colonel Sidhu.
Thank you.
We are very happy to have two of those veterans turned entrepreneurs who have been written about in the book, Lieutenant Colonel Bana and Colonel Samarendra Kumar. Lieutenant Colonel N.P.S. Bana served with distinction in the Corps of Engineers, having contributed several innovations, including the Bana Hut. Having made a smooth transition as an entrepreneur and consultant, he currently wears 6 hats: international consultant in the field of infrastructure development, specialist in post-disaster reconstruction, providing app-based veterinary care to cattle owners, treasurer and chairman, editorial board, World Association of PPP Units and Professionals, chairman of INRO Sri Lanka Chambers of Commerce and Industry, engaged in ITES skills development. Welcome, Colonel Bana. Colonel Samarendra M. Kumar, Sam, to his Fauji friends and veterans, was commissioned in and commanded 9 mechanized infantry. He is co-founder of India and Singapore-based MidCat Advisory Services. MidCat is Asia's leading risk consultancy and has its own artificial intelligence-enabled intelligence platform. The company has advised more than 50 of the world's top global corporations and has executed projects in more than 25 countries across 5 continents. Welcome, Colonel Sam Kumar. Major General KVS Lalotra was the divisional commander of 17th Division and the Director General of the Territorial Army. Post-superannuation, he contributed as the principal of Mayo College. Currently, he is honorary advisor to the Rajput Education Trust, Jodhpur, member of Board of Governors, Maharani Gayatri Devi Girls School, Jaipur, and Rajmata Krishna Kumari Girls Public School, Jodhpur, and chairman, Endeavor Global School, Siliguri. He is a top educational consultant and he is also a TED speaker. Welcome, General Lalotra. So let me get on to our discussion today. My first question is to Colonel Sidhu. Colonel Sidhu, from the study of veteran entrepreneurs that you have written about, please highlight some common threads which allowed them to maximize their potential as entrepreneurs.
Thank you, Raja sir. To start off and put the things into correct perspective as per the question, I will just read out a few lines from my book. There is a source of madness deep within every human being, which if developed, leads to a highly evolved sixth sense of a Karma Yogi and an unquenchable thirst to accept risk and go beyond the conventional wisdom in searching new ideas, horizons, innovations, and activities. It is this evolved sixth sense and unquenchable thirst which identifies the true blue Karma Yogi mad veteran. They are the pathfinders who have happily carried forward their zest for life, fire in their bellies undimmed, passions still free-flowing, capacity to accept risk still alive, and thirst to explore more frontiers insatiable. They are the ones who have performed beyond the wildest dreams of their recruiters, who still answer the armed forces recruitment one-liners in the affirmative. Do you have it in you? Live your passions. Dare to win. Realize your dreams. The entrepreneur sector is the new battlefield for them. Having said this and set the tone for the answer to the question, it is very clear that you have to be crazy, and all 10 of them who are featuring in my book are crazy enough to have put their life savings on the block in ventures which they knew nothing about. They acquired knowledge about it and have succeeded beyond their wildest dreams in their respective entrepreneur ventures. My salute to them. The things which are common, apart from this streak of madness within them, it is that they have followed their passion. They have not gone into the routine entrepreneurs which armed forces personnel should be looking at, which is the security, administration, etc. They have gone into very niche sectors of technology, filmmaking, so on and so forth. This next thing, they have all come out from the armed forces in their middle life. So at this point of time, it is very essential that you have your spouse on board in your entrepreneur ventures, which all 10 of them, when I spoke to them, ensured that their wives were on board in their entrepreneur ventures. These were the sectors in which they went in where they did not have any knowledge. One of them, he did not know anything about cultivation, but they went into these sectors, they acquired knowledge. And thereafter, they succeeded in whatever they had to do. Another thing which they ensured was that they followed their ethics and values, which they had learned in the armed forces. In the long term, in an entrepreneur venture, there is nothing like ethics and values. They still command value in the corporate sector and amongst the clientele, that is the customers. You have to differentiate, do things differently. Again, I will be looking at Major Ravi, who went in as a director in the Malayalam films. I mean, there are others also who made films, but then he made films differently. He says, and I quote his words, that when I enact a scene, I ensure that the spectators, they stand on their seat. For that moment of time, they have forgotten that they are Muslims, they are Hindus, they are Christians, or they are Sikhs. They also forget whether they are communists, or they are Congresses, or they are BJPs. In unison, they are standing on their seat and saying, Bharat Mata ki Jai. So these are the things which they have done. They have done things differently, and that is what is giving them success. Another aspect in which Sam himself this thing spoke to me about, and he's on the dais also today, that you have to ensure that the human resource you are taking on board is of the highest quality. And you should not be able to keep them imprisoned within your entrepreneur idea. The moment they want to leave, you should be happily letting them go, because they are the ones who are the ambassadors, who go into the grapevine and talk about the good things about your entrepreneur ventures. And lastly, and here there were 3 to 4 of them who faltered initially, but then they recovered, and they say that this is the crux, one of the critical crux of the issues, and that is trust, but verify. Trust will not always beget trust to you. So trust the others, trust those who are in business, trust your employees, but always maintain a discreet overwatch. These are the things which I feel are the common to all these 10 entrepreneurs who have figured in my book.
Very interesting, Colonel Sidhu. You have said that the grasp of nuances to reorient yourself to the new professional parameters is the key to a safe transition to a second career and life outside the armed forces. Can you please elaborate on that?
Oh, yes. You see, when we all joined the armed forces, if we recollect our initial days of training, there is a very methodical, though unofficial, deconstruct of the psychological profiles of all the trainees. Now, it is both at the officers level also, as well as at the troops levels also for the recruits. And thereafter, the psychological profile is reconstructed as per the requirements of the armed forces. After having spent 20 to 40 years within the armed forces, you have to again reconstruct that profile to suit the corporate business environment, especially when you are an entrepreneur. So I will just talk about it. In the armed forces, it is the national interest which is supreme. But in the corporate sector, it is the maximizing of the return on investment, the ROI, which takes the place of this national interest. Armed forces on the battlefield, there is no prize for the losers. You are either the victor or you are the vanquished. There is no second, third, fourth positions there. In the corporate sector, you have to look at it from the point of view that how you can make this thing money, because ultimately the business of business is making money. So this is another place where you have to again reconstruct the profile. The statutory obligations in the armed forces, you are 24 hours, 365 days on duty. There is no limit to exploitation of the human resources in the armed forces. You may keep a person on his toes or her toes for 72 hours, for 96 hours. You don't even have to bother whether he is getting his water or he is getting his food or not, he is getting his sleep. He has to be on the toes. In the corporate sector, it is not so. There are statutory laws, there are statutory provisions which have to be looked at. So this is another aspect which we have to see. And then is the human resources, the turnover. Fortunately or unfortunately, this is one of the key differences between the corporate sector and the armed forces. You cannot just straight away put in your resignation and say, I am walking off. Sorry, it is not accepted. In the corporate sector, individual is free to go. It is free will. So you have to ensure that the employees are on board and are willing to work, and only then you will be able to maximize the returns out of them. Hierarchy in the armed forces, as we are well aware, it is rigid and it is well defined. It may not be so in the corporate sector. Your own subordinate may be reporting to two other bosses. There is a business vertical, there is a HR vertical, and so this is very indeterminate. One has got to get used to the hierarchy and again the terms of engagement. In the armed forces, the terms of engagement are fixed, which is not so in the corporate sector. They are made variable depending on the experience, depending on the requirements or the availability of human resource. The terms of engagements may have to be varied from time to time. And then is the motivation aspect. You have to only look at the higher plane to motivate an individual to lay down his life. An individual is not going to lay down his life for the monetary gains. But in the corporate sector, you are not asking for him to lay down the life. He has to be motivated either from the point of view of life goals which the employee wants, or there have to be monetary incentives. And finally, what I will say is that the organizational support. Armed forces, because of the nature of duty, has a very strong organizational support base, which is not so in the corporate sector. So these are the aspects one has to look into. One has to deconstruct your own psychological profile and reconstruct it. There is nobody who's going to help you. There is no organization who's going to help you. You've got to do it on your own. So these are the key aspects which one has to look at when moving into the corporate sector, especially as an entrepreneur.
Thank you, Colonel Sidhu. That was very informative to all of us. So, Colonel Bana, coming to you. In business, networking is an essential skill to possess. You are successful in international networking and developing a market for your consulting services. Can you please let us enlighten us about how you developed this large network of contacts? How did you develop the network from outside the scope of work that you have undertaken?
Sir, once again, namaskar, namaste, and good evening to everybody. And thank you, all the mentors and Colonel Sidhu and Military Lit Fest to give me the chance to share my experiences. Coming to the topic straight away is the networking. Certainly, it's a very valid and important issue today. And if you ask me in one word, what I'm doing as far as networking is concerned, it's all because of my military training. And having said that, let me also share with you that prior to joining Army, I came from a village. At the time of joining Army or Academy, I was unable to put across my views in English adequately. Today, I have been able to give my views, express being part of the panel or part of the various discussions at the UN and any other international forum also. So to that extent, there has been a journey. Now, a network comprises of primarily 4 aspects. One is communication skills. Then is the right etiquettes. And the success comes when you have no expectation. And if you top it up with a sense of giving, then it creates that bonding. So this is where I feel being a veteran has put me ahead of many others. And what is not mentioned in the book, let me also share with the audience here, that I have been able to travel to more than 36 countries, 39 to be precise. And today, I have my World Association grouping in more than 140 countries. And the document which was authored by my team has gone to all UN member nations, which is standard on PPP in railways. So this is all I could do as a because of my training in Army and staff course, and having developed a sense of taking challenge, as Raja Gopal sir said, as Colonel Sidhu had mentioned, when I went to Kashmir Rail Project, I knew nothing about the railway engineering, and leave aside railway engineering, I had only completed my BTech in CME Pune, having done no project of civil engineering proper thereafter. I learned railway engineering and civil engineering on the job there. And thereafter, I got into highway engineering and then consulting. So the sense of taking challenge, making friends, and having good rapport with them worked tremendously to my advantage by leveraging strength to save the project name in Kashmir, where some of our engineers were indicted in a scandal which was of somebody else's doing. Then, I mean, there are numerous places. Coming to the advantage of taking advantage into the business, I would say it comes naturally. When you are in a particular confidence level, you can discuss, you can enrich yourself, at the same time share knowledge for others' benefit. I was lucky that from foreign countries, especially my golfing football from various countries, the ambassadors, and they were, most of them are elder to me, and I had so much to learn, and I had little to do business with them. I only learned, and thereafter that particular knowledge got utilized in various business plannings and business endeavors. So, I mean, I was firstly fortunate to go to Kashmir on deputation, and that was a turning point. And since everybody looked up to me, right from security agencies, coordination, to civil engineers going on their work and delivering the output, to setting up an Primavera satellite-based project management system there. I mean, I was the go-to man between 2006 and 9 for the Kashmir Rail project, which was inaugurated by Prime Minister Manmohan Singh then. So all this was due to the network, and the network was due to my learning in the army, and as a veteran, which I can boast of today, that yes, I came from a worthwhile organization, which helped me through and through. I also ended up going to Harvard Business School to do a small study that is called Strategic Financing for Business. And there again, I was at just best in the merger and acquisition negotiations, a mock kind of drill or war game kind of thing, which happens very frequently in our system. So came back, started my own business. As Tampi sir has said, that many hats I'm wearing today, and I have a natural sense of taking challenges and risks, and certainly I had the support of my friends always. It was primarily, I would say, the God was acting through my friends. And there have been very challenging, life-threatening situations, not once, many times, where no private organization where I was in deputation or otherwise would have compensated me for the kind of risk I took for them. It was madness, as Colonel Sidhu has rightly described. So that's all I would say, and thank you very much. And
fascinating, fascinating, Colonel Bana. I have one more question for you. Your experience clearly comes out, in the depth of what you said. The Indo-Sri Lanka Chambers of Commerce and Industry was a notable outcome of your efforts. The missions of both countries are actively involved in its activities. How can budding entrepreneurs take advantage of these chambers for their businesses? And is there sufficient information flow, these bodies and their members? Is there enough information dissemination? I think he's muted.
Yeah, I think he'll have to be unmuted.
Yeah.
Oh, he's still on mute. Pankaj will have to unmute him.
Pankaj is doing that.
Okay.
Pankaj?
He is unmuted, sir. So.
No.
Yeah, I think you are unmuted now. Colonel Bana, please check.
No, it's still on mute. Shows. It is still showing on mute. Yeah, now unmuted.
Yeah. Now he is.
Okay, sir. As you said, let me also give you a background of Indo-Sri Lanka Chambers. You see, the then High Commissioner of Sri Lanka, Mr. Prasad Karyavasam, and myself, we used to meet for golf. That was in the first decade of this. And that's where I realized that these chambers, CII and FICCI, which are looking at the entire world for business promotion, Sri Lanka is insignificant for them. And Sri Lanka required a very focused approach. And that's where I broached this topic. And then I did some research and found that there is no bilateral body between the two countries. And as we moved forward, I met my co-founders, and then we took a decision to reach out to the governments to obtain permission to set up this chamber. So it was primarily, the credit should go to the then High Commissioner, who was concerned about his nation's business development, to help us or educate us or encourage us to set up the chamber. As regards both the countries not only gave permission, but it was inaugurated in 2016 in Constitution Club in Delhi by then State Minister for Foreign Affairs, General V.K. Singh, and both the High Commissioners were there. Then we again had an inauguration in Colombo, where again their ministers and foreign High Commissioners were there. So it was an endeavor which was collective and again product of the network and discussions, trust, to business relations of the two countries. And as far as budding entrepreneurs are concerned, they can become individual members. They can seek out specific information without becoming member, and we keep disseminating opportunities and the business prospects, and certainly we can educate them on the process of export, import, or anything and everything. And more importantly, we can help them build their own network. And currently we are having every month a webinar. We just finished on 28th a webinar on tourism titled Scintillating Sri Lanka. And in addition, on-demand events can also happen. And we were more than happy if the veterans reach out to us for any input, anything as far as Indo-Sri Lanka relations or business is concerned. Thank you, sir.
Great. Thank you for that answer. So now we go to Colonel Sam. Very rightly you have said, we have to disrupt ourselves before we get disrupted. Please elaborate on why disruption is required in business and how you achieved it in MidCat Advisory Services.
So, thank you, sir. Thank you, Raja, sir. Good evening, seniors, mentors, generals, postmates, friends, ladies and gentlemen. A huge honor to be here and slightly nervous. I speak 100 days in a year, but never been so nervous. So pardon me if it shows. So thank you, Colonel Sidhu, for bringing to life the story of the Mad Veterans. And Raja sir, thank you for very well explaining what the veterans are. And thank you for all those adjectives, crazy, mad, square peg in round hole. And we have read all of it. And by the way, I also applied for Gurjinder Vihar, was very hot today in discussions. I also had a half paid for house, which I sold off in fourth month because the business went through a downturn. So that is the life of entrepreneurs. So coming to your specific questions, and thank you for setting the stage. Coming to your specific questions, disrupt yourself before you get disrupted. Now, I will keep my remarks brief because I'm aware that India has got a match against New Zealand. So I will stick to 2 to 3 minutes max. So let's look at history. Let's learn from history. The pace of change is phenomenal and it is accelerating. So let's look at statistics. I know you are a man for figures, so I'll go with that. Telephone, it took about 75 years to reach 50 million users. By the time we came to radio, it was 38 years. Television took 13 years. Internet took 4 years. By the time we were on to Google, Facebook, it was 3 years. Insta and WhatsApp took 17 months. And Angry Birds Space App took 35 days. And Pokemon Go was to 19 days. And we are in sub 10 days, where, 100 million users you reach in sub 10 days. Now, so we are living in such a crazy world. So military is not the only place where you come across uncertainty. I think every aspect of life is getting impacted. Second is that business models are continuously evolving. If you look at earlier industrial revolution time, you had labor intensive. Then we went to machine intensive. Now we are on to AI intensive. We're getting to intelligent machines everywhere. Businesses are moving from pipes to platforms. So you had let's say Coca-Cola business where you will make a product, then you'll package it very well, then you will market it, and then you will create an inventory of products and distribution channel and all. So now all that, long chain is not there. You don't painstakingly buy land and build hotels and do. So Marriott and Hyatt and Hilton and Taj is being replaced by Airbnb and Oyo, where they don't take, 1 year to add 500 rooms. They add it in, 1 day. So again, the car business models, it's no longer Toyota and Mercedes and others. So it's now Tesla and it's Uber and Ola. So things are going fundamental change. Half-life of business is completely shrinking. Believe you me, in the last 5 years, let's say if I took 5 years back, today we are working with businesses, 50% of them didn't exist. And the pace is so fast, sir. You said we are in 25 countries, we moved to 40 already. So, and you said 50 of the top 100 companies, we moved to 65. So the pace is mind-boggling. Every 3 months, if you don't update, you kind of, you will be confined to the dustbins of history. So half-life of business is shrinking, and it's not peculiar to my company. If you ask a McKinsey or a BCG or a Big Four consulting company, everybody will tell you the same thing. So we ourselves started out as a consulting company. Then we became a service company. And finally, we ended up being a company which is more known for a AI-assisted platform, so a technology company with products. So it's been complete transformation in just 1 decade. One final point, as organizations get bigger, and I'm sure as Fajis, we can million plus organization, we can realize that as we get bigger, I think we become risk averse, and this is so for private organizations also, because the costs of mistakes become much higher. So and that's where these and they develop inertia. That's where these startups get disrupted by garage-based startups. So if you look at the history over the last 25 years. They're not disrupted by like-to-like organizations. They're disrupted by garage-based startups and, entrepreneurs with all those adjectives which you said. So I would say maintaining strategic agility in the face of maturity and in the face of all this disruption is, I think, one of the biggest challenges facing the CEO of today. So we have had our own share of challenges. So I'll just, with these brief remarks, I'll give it back to you because I'm aware of the time. And I want to listen to General Lalhotra. I mean, he's such a passionate speaker. So I think I'd be happy if he takes some of my time.
Great answer, Sam. There's one more question for you before you can hand over to General Lalhotra. Basically, one thing I can assure all the participants here that, if you're an entrepreneur, your adrenaline is always flowing. 10 years, it's still flowing, So adrenaline will be at 100% level. Be sure of that. And that's what Sam told you. So one more question for you, Sam. I'm amazed that you are, offering so much of risk management consulting. It's a very broad area to be in. The portfolio is really very large, particularly when you come to multinational corporations, and they are your customers. So what is your strategy to win in this market? How do you compete against the big four consulting firms? And also, I have read that you have a guiding principle which is called do less to do more. Can you explain that also?
Sir, one thing, I think an excellent question. And I think one thing, and I'll take all those questions, I'll put it in one, that I have always been guided by military principles of war. So those, 10 principles of war or 11 or 12, depending on some countries have 7, some countries have 13. So the first principle, that is selection and maintenance of aim, that has to be absolutely clear. It's absolutely applicable in corporate world anywhere. And even Stephen Covey calls it begin with the end in mind. So everybody kind of calls it differently, but it still begins selection and maintenance of aim. So that is first. And focus is nothing, sir. It's concentration of force. So all the principles are very, very similar of business. They have all been derived from military. So we started out like, I meet entrepreneurs and they tell me I will do this and this and this. I'll do 3 things and one will succeed. I bet none will succeed. If you do one thing and you're truly passionate about, and in that also you carve out your niche, then the chances of success get magnified. If I were to take our example, we were also naive entrepreneurs, and we said we'll build a great consulting company and we'll be all over the world. And then kind of reality struck us. In first 4 months, we were like house sold, everything kind of gone. Okay. So we started with business advisory, technology advisory, HR advisory, and risk advisory. Like good Fauji, you think you can do everything because you know a bit of everything in Fauj. So by the time we went to first 6 months, we realized we are not doing 3 things. We are only into risk. Then we realized even the more we kind of got into it, we realized risk has got, strategic, operational. When I talked to a banker, they talked only about credit risk, liquidity risk, hedging risk, and forex risk, and whatever. And I understood nothing of it. And then when we talked to a lawyer, he talked about only litigation and those kind of things. Then I realized, oh, risk is also a big animal. So what we are talking about is operational risks. Okay, and which is the security, safety, geopolitical, socio-economic, environmental, technological, regulatory. So we got onto all this. So we got that, okay, this is the niche that we have to play in. We started focusing on that. We started getting success, and then over a period of time, we realized 3-4 years back that before platform, the whole world is moving to platform. It was there for everyone to see. So we said, okay, now we have defined our niche, now build a platform. And as we started building platform, AI and ML started coming in. Now this artificial intelligence was always there. It was there for 25, 30 years. I mean, you would know. It was there for, now what has changed is that computational power has become so much, and and better data sets are available. So you can do magic with it. So now we built a platform, and actually we are creating magic out of it, and life is so easy. So I can assure you, I mean, it's a continuous invention, innovation, re-innovation, disrupting yourself, focus, doing less to do more. And I tell all wannabe entrepreneurs, don't try on 3 things. You will fail in all 3. I bet you will fail in all 3. Try one thing, try to, again, say, what else can you leave? And then whatever you do, be the best in it. And your chances of success get exponentially magnified.
Thank you, Colonel Sam. Wonderful answer. Benjamin Franklin once said, an investment in knowledge pays the best interest. General Allotra, you have contributed significantly to the education of thousands of young minds as the principal of Mayo College. What you did there will make a positive difference to our lives through the thinking and actions of your students now and in the future. Can you explain some of the major changes brought about and by you, and what motivated you to do the same?
Raja, thank you for having me over. I think the whole thing is becoming a little too serious. I thought it was a festival and there'll be a lot of smiling faces and, HK would set the tone, but everything got so serious, and I think Bana was too serious, and Sam, of course, has lightened the moment. But I think we need to firstly thank Colonel Sidhu. We are here because Colonel Sidhu's book is being discussed. We were in Sri Lanka together. being mad. And I never knew this mad guy was actually right next to me. He was commanding a mech company, and we connected. We wrote the after action report together of 57 Mountain Division. I never knew that as majors, you could write all that, as young people. Now I think we must be really good that he writes a book and I'm being invited to talk. But I think we need to, when you talk about veterans doing something great, I think the credit goes to H.K. Singh, who's here. This idea of all this germination about 5-6 years back, I gave up, but H.K. Singh carried on with all this. And we're very lucky that we are here on this platform. So before I answer your question, I'm a little scared because on this platform, there is I was staff officer to him, Lieutenant General JBS Yadav. He's also joined in. Rakesh Sharma, my regiment, Nalish Kamal, my regiment, Satish Chandra, my regiment. Then there's a soldier, Kal Sidhu, who served with me in Sri Lanka, who knows. So I am actually a little scared. And then there's a Senarian, Abdo Sandhu, and I believe there's a Mayoite also who's present here. So I've got to speak the truth and nothing but the truth. And your question is about Benjamin Franklin. So firstly, I was quickly trying to Google and see as to who was this character. So I realized that he was one of the founding fathers of America, 250 years odd, ago. He talked about this wonderful quote that he said about knowledge. So, all great civilizations, they became great because they invested in knowledge. So I'm not going to say as to why I went down to Mayo College, because a lot of people raised their eyebrows. General Sahab, Mayo College mein principal teacher ban ke ja rahe hain. There was a lot of, thing. But, selection and maintenance of aim, what Sam said, I had a lofty aim. And what was my aim was within 4 years, transform the best school which existed, Mayo College, the leading school, and bring it on a global stage. A lot of people have said, why didn't you go to a government school if you're so passionate about it? That's another story for another day. But firstly, what I wanted to do was to relay the foundations. Many Mayoites may not like it. I said, relay the foundation for successive Indian principles to rebuild a great institution. I say this because I was of the opinion that the British had a purpose in Mayo which no longer existed. They had wanted to groom future princes and nobles who thought British and looked Indian. I had been to Mayo College because my brother was a burst in the girls' school, part of the founding team. And I wondered why Mayo College was still serving the purpose of the British. I was of the belief that it was time to nurture future Indian leadership that thought Indian but looked global. So this was my aim, actually. And this is the first time when I'm articulating it, I've not written it down. People wonder what I was trying to do. Secondly, what I want to do was to nurture the faculty at Mayo College who could evolve as future principals of other good Indian schools. So they carry forward my thought and passion to transform and then set a chain reaction. Thirdly, encourage other like-minded people. I saw these veterans and, what a pool of talent which are there. But, they shy away from getting into other jobs because, they carry their baggage of rank with them. So I wanted to encourage these guys that, come on, step out, damn it. Step into the world. This is the time to enjoy and actually give back to the nation. So I wanted, so that was my, these I won't say about the aims, but these were something which also motivated me to go to Mayo College. And lastly and fourthly, and that's the most important, was to invest in development of the heart and mind of students. So, this is not being done in India anymore. The heart and mind is not being developed. You're not producing citizens with empathy. While doing so, identify their talent and nurture it to such an extent that when they step out into the world, they go as leaders in those various fields. They need to become successful leaders in those fields. So Mayo College was a great opportunity, and its board and alumni actually were absolutely supportive of all the initiatives I took. And your question, I come to the answer to your question is that let me narrate a few of the initiatives I took. You want to know what initiative you took? I redefined the curriculum at Mayo. So curriculum is nothing else what you experience through your journey at Mayo College. It was divided into many programs. I mean, it's always given there, but it's for just tick mark's sake. I said, let's divide it into specific programs. I had to explain it to the teachers, to the board, to the faculty. Draw detailed syllabus. The amount of written work I must have done to prepare the syllabus and all that. Phenomenal. Volumes and volumes. Allocated time, allocated resources, allocated finances, and rapidly build infrastructure. I couldn't, sit there and write a thesis. While I was doing all this, I had to rapidly build infrastructure to support each program. For a while, actually, Mayo College campus really looked like a war zone. Everything was dug up, everything was moving, people were wondering what I was doing. So my programs, they included development, as I mentioned, of the heart and soul, it was a boys' school, so an intense physical fitness and body sculpting program. Boys like good bodies, they like to do good things. So I said, how do we get hold of that? While doing that, I said, everyone should be able to listen to the conductor of a good orchestra. So music actually became compulsory. From class 4 onwards, everyone had an instrument. So first time when I went there, I found everyone looking left, right, and Raja, you won't believe it. Within 1 year, you could go there and stand and people actually listen to you with the motions of your fingers or with your eyes. 400 people would just watch. And that was a transformation of young boys and girls. You could get these people to listen to you. That was what music did to it. So there was a music program which was rolled out. There was a compulsory games program. It was distinct from a sports program. This games program was only for de-stressing, recreation, and team building. But there was an equally important sports program that was to nurture specific sports talent, for which you had infrastructure, you required coaches. Then there was the hobbies and skilling program. I had a board put up in 2010, much before Mr. Modi became the Prime Minister. It said Skilling Center. I'll talk about it a little later. It said Skilling Center over here. I said, every guy who goes from here must be skilled. We had a well-structured social service program. And I want to tell the veterans over here, in 2012, we were cleaning the Shatabdi train and telling people how to sit in the Shatabdi and how to not to litter the railway station. Once a week, a full house would go and do this. All these initiatives, our campus became green. Everybody said, wow. So there was nothing much. What Sam said is, I carried the army, I carried my old school, that's the spirit of never given, that's Lawrence School Sana, and I brought it to one of the finest institutions that the country was there. Our social service program became very meaningful. Our clubs and societies became very, very active, and everything revolved around these clubs and societies. We had hikes and camping programs, and they were not to NASA and they were not to cities and towns. You won't believe it, that Mayo boys went down to Nathula, they went down to Tawang, they went to the borders. Some of the guys had never traveled in a train because they could afford to come in the chartered planes or come by air. I said, guys, unless you travel in a train and see what Bihar and UP is, so I said, I'll get in with you in a third-class compartment. I think, the army guys can rough it out. They said the principal of Mayo College traveling 3 AC. I said, yes, the students must, look out of the window and see what India is. And you won't believe it that when we traveled through UP and Bihar, most of the countries still didn't have light. I am sharing this with you with honestly. And therefore, these were the future leaders, and therefore there was a program. The next I attended to was the faculty and the administrative support. How can you say that you will train a few faculty, what the CBSE? I said, every goddamn chap on the campus needs to be trained and annually. So if you want the best campus, obviously, if you're housekeeping staff, if you're the gardener, the horticulture department, or the mess staff, you need to come to Delhi to the metro station. You need to go to the airport. You need to go to the best places. So you can imagine every man, you won't believe it, that we have got about per child 2 employees. So 1,600 people had to move every day to various places. Tum ye dekh ke aoge. Within 1 year, they said, sir, abhi hame chhod do. Humko to sirf khurpi pakadna sikhaya tha. Now don't tell us what to do. We will tell and we'll give you a better Mayo College. That's how the training. We evolved a program called MTech in Teaching Technology. I realized that, look, teaching, what we are today talking, we have 2 more friends here. We have the CEO of the Extra Marks Foundation, which is a leading digital education company, Mrs. Poonam Jamwal. She is the CEO. We have Mr. Jagan Reddy, who's EduTech. I was just seeing this thing. They've also joined in. Post-retirement, I was with the Extra Marks Education Company as the advisor, and I helped take technology into all the Army Goodwill schools through kind courtesy, Mrs. Jamwal. So what we did is, we got into digital learning in 2010 at Mayo College. And we evolved a program with NIT University. This was the brainchild of the founder of NIT University, he came and met me. And I said, we need to now teach teachers how to teach. So we had an MTech in teaching technology. And if you ask me, normally you say, oh, you must have sent your science teachers. No, the first lot of people who I sent were staff members from the humanities and the sports department. So when they came back, whom we consider as not someone who's most important in the school, when they became MTech in teaching technologies, it put the cat amongst the pigeons. Every staff member wanted to go and upgrade and do well. And, we today Mayo College today is one of the, they absorb technology like fish adopt water. We had a hobbies and a skilling program. The Indian Music School, the orchestra is for 400 people. So when the Vice President of India came there on a visit, after what he saw, he says, I'm the Vice President of India, I'm from the Foreign Service, I've visited all over. He says, there's a school like this in India? That is the type of impression. And all this took just about 2.5, 3 years. And what Sam said is, come on, yaar, maintain your aim and be passionate about doing things. HK is here. Within 1 year, we set up the best band in the country. That's the Territorial Army Band. People don't want to listen to it these days. General Milan Naidu is there. He's aware of this, and Hardy led it. It was a challenge thrown to us. We said, okay, don't bring recruits and train them music. Bring musicians and make them soldiers. We did the reverse. You're going to think out of the box. And we had the best band. And Raja, you are from the Navy. I just want to light away to say, if the TA band, fusion band was to play along with the naval band, we will beat it. Of course, I concentrated a lot on the infrastructure, because without infrastructure, so world-class labs. We didn't say music room. We said music school. The music school is the size of a normal school. I said, let's do all this. We had skilling, studios, workshops to support them. And if you were to say what all was there, art, craft, metalwork, woodwork, aero modeling, automobiles. A child, whatever he wished to do, we had an instructor provided. And Mayo College was not at, I hope there are no DOSCOs here. It was not a Doon school fees. It was a very grounded school like Sanaa. The fees were not very high. I was very conscious, and we also ensured that the defense people get some bursaries. There were about 34 defense students, which I started in my time. They were studying on 33% concession. I ensured that if you want boys' school to be not into mischief, they need to be kept busy. So the sports and games program was so well organized. And if I tell you, When Kapil Dev came there to the school, I called him. I said, Kapil, why don't you come over and spend a day with us? In the evening, when he talked, he said, you have got 8 football grounds, 2 cricket grounds full size where you can have 2 Ranji Trophy matches simultaneously, 1 polo ground, 1 polo arena, 60 horses on the campus. You have a golf course in your backside. You have, when he said all this, all this was there. I just about ship-shaped it and revived it. And, it was so difficult for me to get the students off the horse to get them on the desk. And when I left in 2015, let me tell all the veterans, and I tell the veterans, please spread the word around. You all are better than me. I come from 11 GR, which in the pecking order is last in the infantry regiment. And perhaps I was not good enough, so I didn't go beyond my present rank. You all are much better. Just believe in yourself, have a good aim, and carry on. So these were some of the initiatives that I could talk about. Since Sam gave me 2 minutes extra, I've taken it without your permission.
Amazing answer, and we're completely awed by what you've done there, sir. And we have also done some great work as a prime mover in the planning and construction of state walls at Jaipur and Nathula, the Army Heritage Museum at Shimla, and the Manekshaw Convention Center at Delhi. How difficult was it for you to move things ahead? And how did you achieve the high standards of excellence embodied in these monuments, particularly with the multifarious agencies being involved?
I had a good team. I was very fortunate. And you've got to reach out. I don't know why army officers are shy to make friends with politicians. Politician doesn't mean that you support the person. I went and met the chief minister of Rajasthan. I said, Madam Chief Minister, and this is exactly how I spoke to her. I said, Madam Chief Minister, the Siberia commander has been in Jaipur for the last 2 months. He's seeking an appointment with you. And I'm told you're so busy that you can't meet the Siberia commander. I represent the Indian Army over here. Vasundhara Raje was the chief minister. So she looked at me. She said, I'm very sorry. I said, but you have to make up for that. She says, you can come down to my office straight away. Now, if you establish Chapo like this, then where is the problem? She sent the commissioner, Jaipur Development Authority, whatever brigadier wants, please give that. And what an honor they did. I said, I said, stop going and inaugurating memorials of martyrs in the villages. This money is given for widows to lead a life post-retirement. It is meant for educating the children, and public pressure ensures that they build gates and memorials. I said, build a beautiful memorial at Jaipur and tell that widow, your husband's name is here, this is the only memorial, and save this money for your child's education. She said, this is a wonderful idea. I will not inaugurate any more memorials. So we built a memorial there. And we built it at a place where even the High Court had given orders that there will be no construction. We went to the High Court. We said, this is inspiration for generations to come. There's a sound and light program there, and they wanted to ticket it. I said, how ridiculous. How can you ticket inspiration for generations to come? Can't do it. She says, okay, no ticketing. So there's a free sound and light show which runs over there. So, these are opportunities. General Milan Naidu is here. General JBS Yadav is here. He gave me an opportunity at the 11th Gurkha Rifle Center. I did something there. And of course, General Milan Naidu said he had been RTRAC Army Commander. So I set up the Heritage Museum for the Indian Army he must have seen that. So, he was kind enough to send me a commendation card from there, which I treasure because I have 2 of them. He sent me a commendation card for the Army Heritage Museum. I said, yaar, ऐसी चीज बना के छोड़ के जानी चाहिए where, the heritage of the Indian Army is displayed. And where did I do it? In barracks. But what a beautiful place it's been converted into. And therefore, based on that, when General Milan Naidu was the vice chief, he must have told Deepak Kapoor, and I was called here and I became the consultant. I'm not an engineer. I'm from Gurkhas. I'm from 11 GR. I'm the last in the pecking order. There were so many engineers. I think you're going to be passionate about doing things and doing them with great gusto. I had no problem. Anything that I asked for was given. I don't think anyone said no to me.
Wonderful. Awesome answer, sir. And, it's very difficult. We all know that working with public agencies is pretty difficult, but it seems to be so easy for you.
No, I don't know this stage. She called the architect, she called everyone when I was at Jaipur. She said, Jo Brigadier Saab karte hai, and you won't believe it. They put a huge plaque. I said, put the name of all my officers who worked on the project. So they put a rock. Besides giving due respect and credit to me, they have given credit right down to a major who was associated. I think that is what we are capable. And I would only urge veterans to motivate the youngsters. Don't feel shy. Go out. You will not do anything wrong. Motivate the next generation. We have huge talent and huge potential. HK Singh has done it. This military lit festival is absolutely phenomenal. Let me tell you, I give it full marks.
So now ladies and gentlemen, we come to the speed round. Okay. One round of questions for all the speakers. So first question to Colonel Sidhu, being the architect of this whole session through his book. Can you enlighten us how the veteran entrepreneurs in your book have played a nation building and social upliftment role?
Oh, thank you very much, sir. I just want to share with you that this was the key criteria when I was looking at who should be the 10 veterans who are mad enough to be featured in the book. I did not look at the financial balance sheets or at the ROI and so on and so forth. It was what is the new aspect as far as the entrepreneur part is concerned, and also what is it that is they are giving back to the society. So as far as I will just go through all 10 of them in the order in which they have appeared in my book. So one is Major Ravi, hardcore commando from the NSG who took part in some very high-profile missions, including the hunt for the mysterious killers of the ex-Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi. And he has got some very interesting sidelights to share on those aspects. It is that he has carried through his passion and he has brought about a change in the Malayalam film industry also as a new director. To give you, today he is the director of choice by the superstars of the Malayalam movies like Mammootty, etc. I recall when I was speaking to him that in one of the functions, he had to travel around 3 hours or so to reach the point. And when he reached there, the host was nowhere to be seen. He just waited for around 15 minutes and then he pushed back. He drove back all the 3 hours and he missed a go-by. Same is the case whenever he has to assemble his team for the shoot. Everyone has to be present dot on time, like the armed forces, in fact, even 5 minutes before time, because this rule is very simple. If the director can come 5 minutes before time, everybody else better be there, whether they are stars or superstars and whatever, and it rules the roost. He's also been taking part in large number of social activities and social commitments. Number of times when I used to be giving him a ring, he used to be involved in those activities on stage, etc. And his latest passion now is to start off training of 600 students annually through a concern which is in the process of raising presently, who will be trained to appear and qualify for the examinations for the Army, Navy, the Air Force, IPS, IAS, and MBBS, because these are the 6 sectors which he selected that he will train and give them free schooling and free tuitions to undergo these. And this is not only that he'll be doing it for within the country. He'll be doing it even outside for the Indian diaspora and those who are in the manual jobs outside are unable to look after the higher education of the children. So this is a very excellent aspect which he is doing. And his forte, as far as the Malayalam film industry is concerned, is war movies, or movies which bring bring passion, nationalism to the fore. He's on the process of directing a movie often, which is about a child in JNK who is likely to be put onto the path of moving into the insurgency. But because of intervention, joins the armed forces, and what change that gentleman makes into the life of JNK. Recently, he is also in the process of bringing to the public the life of Major Chand Malhotra of the 9 Para SF, which is in the WhatsApp groups these days. He is the person who's claimed to be the person who first carried out the first cross-border raid, in which 37 people were killed. As far as the enemy was concerned. So these are the aspects. Then we have Sergeant Bhaurao Saraswat of Saraswat Engineering Services. Undeniably, he was the #1 Master Sergeant Electrician of the Indian Air Force, and the appointments which he held, his reports, his results very topped in all these electrical courses. I mean, they speak about it. After he had left the Indian Air Force, he was the troubleshooter of choice for the technical troubles which came about not only in his own vertical, but in the other verticals. He, unfortunately, today is no more with us. Just 7 months back, he has gone for the heavenly abode, but he has ensured that his work is being carried forward by his son, Amit Saraswat, who is now in the process of completing the entire electrical project for the nuclear power plant, which is coming up in Kota, Rajasthan, by December this year, and also to complete the entire electrical project for the underground Mumbai metro, which is slated for completion in 2023. Of course, we have Sam and Pawan. Sam himself is on the floor today. So there is nothing much I can say about them, excepting that his MidCat Advisory Services is mitigating knowledge age threats. The name itself speaks a lot as far as his company and the outfit is concerned. Apart from the fact that he is the leader as far as risk consultancy and advisories are concerned in India, and also in Asia with the office which he's got in Singapore. They are the ones who are advising the corporates, the financial sectors, going out to the international financial sectors like New York, Amsterdam, Singapore, and these other places where you're holding talks and giving advice to the international financial sectors as far as the business risks in India are concerned. It's a tremendous soft power which they are exercising over the multinationals and getting them to come and invest in India. Then Rakesh, we have, yes.
We have a visitor, surprise visitor who has appeared.
Yes.
And we are short of time. He is from your book, actually. Can we give him about a minute or 2 minutes?
Oh, definitely. In fact, much more. My book can always be read, but the visitor needs to be heard.
Otherwise, we will run short of time.
Yes, please.
I will call M.S. Atwal. And if you are hearing Atwal?
He is muted.
Yeah, I can see him, but he's muted. He will have to be unmuted.
Pankaj, please unmute Atwal.
Colonel Atwal, sir, welcome onto the stage.
Thank you.
Welcome, Colonel
Atwal. Hi, Sam. How are you? Well, first of all, hello to everybody.
Atwal, you are so far off across the seas. and we wish you were part of the panel, but you are part of the book. You've done some great job. You have about 3 minutes to tell us something. You left a great career and now you're there, what you're doing. And I mean, something interesting. 3 minutes.
One thing which I can say about him is that he was almost the man who could have been the chief of the armed forces in case he had stayed on.
But thanks for the good words, HK. I think, for the people who are watching, especially the people who want to become, veterans earlier, leave the army, midlife, like some of us have left. One has to get used to two things. Number one is that you get your pay on the first of the month and you don't have to think about it for the, the 20, 30 years, whatever time you serve in the army. But the day you step out, it is not only that you have to worry about what you are going to get, you are more worried about that if you hire a few people, how are you going to sustain them? That's a big pressure that comes on your head when you start a company. Working in the corporate sector is very different, but if you want to start your own venture, that's the number one thing which comes to your mind. That, if you are hiring a few people, telling them, join us, you need to sustain the organization. Right?
I think
the second thing which is
take over.
The second thing which is equally important is that why should you leave the army? You leave the army because it's a very good life. You want to do something different, and then you have to make sure that you are enjoying what you do. So, if you are going to do into a field, then you need to think about it for some time and then get into what, is that can be done by you. So if these two things in your mind are clear, then you can step out and, venture into the world and do something different. So what have I done in 1 minute? The biggest achievement that I have is I think I have initiated India's #1 or the only defense project abroad. We have given a project of nearly $1 billion to a Government of India company to build what we don't have ourselves in India, is the border system for Oman with Yemen. And that's the hottest border in the world today. As the whole design has been done by us. And we gave the civil works because we didn't want to get into building of roads and bridges and culverts and buildings to them. But the entire backbone in terms of either it is the sensor or it is the fiber optic network or it's the power systems or the control rooms is ours. And we have also done a few things here which are very different. I'm from engineers, so everything I have done other than engineers. I have upgraded their tanks, I have upgraded their artillery, I have done their signal communication system. And I think the biggest achievement in that part has been most of this has been done with India, which is actually today looking at exporting something. So because of that, now we have started a setup in India. And I hope in the next few years, that setup will move forward. So maybe, we are in a stage where we've already done a few trials. We made something which the other people have not been able to make. We have competed with Bharat Forge, we have competed with Larsen, and we have won. And I think that's where we stand. So we wish all the best to veterans, and we have a lot of them working with us. I have people from my regiment. I have, this unit, the place where I am, I have already got my adjutant, my company commander, my 2 IC, 3 of them with me. So it's like a unit. and a lot of men, including the guy who was with me when I left the CO. He's in the house here. So we have a lot of people. That's where we are.
Thank you very much, Colonel Atwal. That was really invigorating and very heartening to see great work that you have done and taking the Indian government forward also. So these are the things we are very proud of. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are sort of a bit short of time. So please try and keep your answers as brief as possible. Now, I want to ask Colonel Bana a question. He is in public-private partnerships, and the Indian PPAC committee, which is the Public-Private Partnership Accounting Committee, in financial year 21 has recommended 7 projects worth 66,600 crores. You have deep experience in India and abroad about PPP. Can you tell us what are the major models and how successful this whole endeavor PPP model is? And do the private and public sectors make equal profitability and share the risks equally?
Yes, sir. as far as PPP is concerned, public-private partnership, in India, this is a very well-developed and mature model. In fact, in certain cases, India is a leading example for others. Now, we in India have PPP in almost all sectors, whether it's highways, whether it's railways. In railways, it could be in station development, it could be lines, it could be rolling stock. In airport, it's there. In seaport, it is there. So, and they have different revenue models. Like for railways, there could be, as at stations, it could be user fee with, plus usufruct rights for the land development. And for rolling stock, it could be availability based. Airport is again user fee based. Seaport could be land development and user fee. So many of these, and these are, you may have heard many names like BOT, BOOT, build, operate, transfer, build, own, operate, transfer, BT, build, transfer, LROT, lease, renovate, operate, transfer, PLT, all those, you know. And thereafter, in India, since I have to keep it brief, I'll also tell you that India is only one which is pursuing, especially in highway sector, a innovative approach for better risk management is called HAM, hybrid annuity model, which you may have heard many times, NHAI and or other people talking about it, wherein the financial risk of generating revenue after the project becomes commercially operational is also subsumed by the NHAI, and 40% of the project cost is paid in specific tranches during the construction of the project, and 60% is paid subsequent to commercial operations. So a concessionaire or a developer who was to raise the entire 100% cost of project on their balance sheet earlier is only required to plan for 60%, and that also not against a traffic risk. So that is taken, that's how you see so many highways coming up and all. But at the same time, as I will come to that, the suitability or the economic angle of that. Before that, I would just tell you that in addition to such models, the world and India also has provisions for unsolicited proposals. So these are well acknowledged and legally tenable. In India, we have primarily Swiss challenge approach, whereas in Korea and Latin America, they also have the proposal, unsolicited proposal, being given bonus point. I mean, it is put to tender, and bonus points are given to the entity which brought in the tender, the proposal first, and so the entity is compensated for bringing in the proposal on table, and then the fair tendering takes place. And but unsolicited proposals, unless there is a very well-defined and enforceable regulatory regime, they can be cause for nepotism or corruption. So while they duly compensate for lack of capacity or finance with the entities or the government which needs such development, the requirement of having a very well-defined legislation containing very clear regulatory mechanism is an important part. And as far as PPP, my thesis is also, which is submitted for now, Viva is going to take place any time, is also integration of Swiss challenge approach in PPP mode to develop the rural infrastructure, to expedite the development of rural infrastructure in India. Because the major disparity is in the infrastructure, whether it is communication infrastructure or any other infrastructure, where most of the development, even in PPP mode, is happening in urban centers, because those who have to plan, they have only limited capacity, and that capacity gets utilized where it is the decision makers decide. So if the concept which I am proposing is basically the entrepreneurs from the tier 2, tier 3 cities or the villages or rural areas can propose their own, and then those works can be awarded to them, and it could be an economic model, because there have been questions raised that PPPs are very costly and they lead to many times not very fair practices. And in my paper, which is just published in World Association, I have advocated how lean and mean PPPs can be set up, which are more bankable, have more value for future, value for money, and could be really of good use to the society at large. That's all.
Yeah, thank you, Colonel Bana. That is very useful information. Gives us a far better understanding of PPP model. Colonel Sam, you have these war rooms for very big MNC customers. So how do you bring together all the information about the parts of the security of the organization, and how do you present a holistic picture to your customers?
So I'll keep it very simple. You have a platform. So these days, all organizations which are great, they have three things. They are asset light, they are data heavy, and they are algorithmically inspired. So you just need a small platform and big screens. And then you get whole lot of data, millions of data points. You put some AI engines, let's say a large multinational corporation, it gets millions of, data from humans and from, machines, from AI, IoT, all kinds of things. It travels over, say, 10, 12, 20 mediums of communication, comes in one place, you run some algorithms on it, get some intelligence out of it. It's just like military war room. And depending on the context, when we had COVID, we built a COVID war room. Depending on the sector, in banks, you're looking for different kind of things. In manufacturing sector, you're looking. So I will not go into details because we're already getting a little late. Let me just kind of make my quick summing up remarks if you give me 2-3 minutes. And I will take the things from the book itself. And what I learned from military, because this is a great audience, and, and one or two things even for generals. First time I've got in life to advise generals, because that's the biggest HR pool being listed. Okay. First is selection and maintenance of aim. I taught, Army taught us the need to to select the correct objective. We go into so much of details to select the correct objective, then plan meticulously and execute flawlessly. I mean, there is a great thing on selection of team from UPSC, SSB, 5-day, and then medical and so many. So there is great emphasis on selection of team people, the need to stay focused, the concentration of force, the main effort, and focused and resilient. So Army again taught us. Now all these things are very, very important in corporate world. Agility. If you look at agility, it is built into the doctrine and strategy and organizational structure of military. What is battle groups, combat groups, and combat teams? You have a core, and you can just fit some. You can attach Air Force to it. You can attach helicopters to it. You can build a engineer squadron. You can build anything. So battle groups are the biggest example of agility. Again, Bana talked about network. Networkers. One thing I have seen in all networkers, including Colonel Bana, they always give more than they get. So one of the things I have said, when you're going to a place to network that I will get something out of people, you are just going to fail. So networkers always give more than they get. And one thing which Colonel Atwal very well brought out, that when we hang uniform, we are no longer supported by this large brand called Indian Army. And forget about your pay. That is never the concern, because we are all, Fauji leaders. It's always the pay of the other teammates and other things. So we had to sell our house, not to support ourselves, but to support our teams. So veterans have huge potential. It has much been talked about. We kind of keep patting ourselves on the back, even if nobody else does. I think others also do. I think time for a reality check. Veterans can do a lot. You can become an entrepreneur. Generals, let's look at what all generals can do, because many of them ask me, many have asked me for suggestions. Not happy to report that not one has followed my suggestion. So great. So I hope somebody is taking note. You could mentor startups. You've got a lifetime of experience. Young people, they can't handle complexity the way we can handle in military. So you can be a great mentor to startup. There can't be a better mentor than a Fauji general to a young entrepreneur. You can be angel investor. You carry loads and loads of money when you retire, and all of it, don't waste it on real estate agents. You can mentor 100 startups rather than giving it to a real estate investor who will run away with it. So you could be angel investor. You could be a mentor. You could lead projects on scale. If we're talking about 40-50 lakh, if we plant 10 trees in one day, we can plant 5 crore. We tell Modi ji, bhai, ek din mein kar denge, aap ye chodo, baki sab. Even if each of us plant. So we can do projects at scale. We can produce mass leaders at scale. We can educate at scale. HK sir was talking about 7 lakh people we will train in football. We can, take 1 million people and make them play and then produce a world champion football team. We can do things which are kind of impossible. We always kind of surprise people with producing Olympic champions. Now we need to do it at scale. And I think technology provides us, Raja sir will agree, provides us a great mantra for doing anything at scale. So technology with military leadership and experience, I think that is the lethal combination that can completely change the complex of the nation. And my last point is that, which I always make it, that from 3500 BC to 1700 AD, India was the leading global power. Okay, so we were a quarter of world GDP, about 23% to be exact. So time has again come, the full circle, world has come. I have great faith in the young generation and mentored correctly and shown the correct path by our generation. I think together we can make a difference and then get India back to the center of the world. So big thank you, Raja sir, and big thank you all esteemed panelists, Lalhotra sir, my co-mate Naresh Bana, and all our friends, all Madvets, Colonel Atwal, the military fest. It has been great kind of.
Well said, Sam. Powerful message there for all of us. And I think most of us or all of us would agree to that. So now we got something very different. So Hemant, if you can please get the video ready. I'm going to show you a video clip about the Indian Armed Forces on the Chinese border, just to break the monotony a little bit. This was the precursor to the subsequent Doklam stand. General Lalhotra sir, you as the divisional commander of 17th Division are seen in this amazing interaction with these Chinese officers. Can you please enlighten us as to the circumstances and the action you took as Div Commander at this time?
I am very clear about the boundary. You have started violating. Before you go back, you convey to your general, you tell your general, we settle boundary through negotiation at Nathula. This will not be demolished and you will not demolish. This has been for years there. Don't take any steps which will violate the peace and tranquility. You have done that there. We will not permit you to demolish anything.
No! Our border personal meeting. Tomorrow you will say there. Next day, there. No.
You come here. Can't come here. We remain here only. I will not allow you. So you can do anything, but I will not allow you. I am telling you now. You have been transgressing this place. That is why this problem is coming up. You can remain here.
That's my area. That's my area. I won't let you go. No, you go then. I'll stop it right now. Every time you have been crossing. That's India. From tomorrow you will see much more strength. You can come in whatever strength you want to come. I won't let you go beyond this point.
Yo! What? No, India. This one is India. This one is. Listen, you should go from this side.
It captured the spirit of the moment of 2007 when I took over command. What I observed was that the Chinese were at will transgressing across the watershed into our areas. So when I was a little shocked and perplexed. So I said it needs to be stopped, first reported and then stopped. Like an honest soldier, I said this is what's happening and what are the orders and I need to stop it. So no one would tell me what to do. So I decided myself what has to be done. And I said, one visit is better than 1,000 reports. I said, let me not go and pass orders, written orders to units and formation. Let me go down on ground. I wish you had heard the video. Unfortunately, you couldn't hear it. In fact, I opened my zip. I said, please record it. I thought the Chinese were recording it. I never knew the Indians were also recording it because actually I should have been court-martialed that time. I said, open the zip. And I told the guy, I'm a general of the Indian Army. Now you send this to your boss there and tell him that we'll not let you come. And you put your foot here, you'll go back without a foot or you may not go back. And this was seen by the commanders. So the next video is of the commanders chasing. That's a gypsy chasing a huge monstrous vehicle. The next one is he became a general. He's there in Calcutta as the area commander, Sadbir of 2 Jat. He's the commanding officer. And he tells the chap that you try and cross now and I'll show you what I'll do. And the third video is of Grenadier soldiers who actually got hold of these guys that time. This all happened in 2007. I told these guys 2 things, and if I'm permitted, because all soldiers, there are 55 of you, I'm sure you will not want to leave it. If you had heard this video, I just told 2 things to the formation. I said it's like this, the war will never take place during my command. Be very sure about that. But what will happen is the war will take place. You'll have a face-off with the Chinese 10 years down the line. And that was supposed to be 2018. It happened in 2018. And I said, within the next 5 years to 10 years, you may have a war. Now, armies don't settle boundaries. I don't know why we are talking boundary talks. Armies settle boundaries not through negotiations. Armies settle boundaries through force by winning a war and occupying areas and saying this is the boundary. So I can't be negotiating. That's the MES job to be done there. I said, I will dictate where the boundary is there. So I went and occupied certain things. They said, whose permission? So I said, you didn't ask me. You gave me a task, and that is maintaining the sanctity. And I said, this is how I will do it. You can't now tell me how to do it. And I said, gentlemen, this is how you will do it. That's the first thing. Second thing I said is that 25 years down the line or 20 years down the line, when you have a war, people shouldn't curse us and say our forefathers didn't do their job well and we are suffering for that. I said, if an ant can make an anthill, which is 1,000 times more than their height, an ant makes to protect itself. I said, why should Indian Army be making bunkers in which one shell comes and ready you clock? I said, start doing your work well. I said, do soldiering, don't blame the others. So my orders were very clear. I said, as a leader, be on the ground. So you find me with Chinese soldiers. I said, this is how, this is all I could have done. I didn't want to go down in history as someone who was waiting for orders and sat at his headquarters. So thank you, Raja. But this video is not by me. It was on social media. I think someone from these battalions because CO doesn't, the GOC doesn't carry all this team. I think these battalions had recorded all this and they put it, and it came from one of the Mayo College boys who had been to Nathula and said, "Sir, we've seen this. This is circulating on the," and therefore I shared it with you. Thank you.
So we all here salute you for the actions which you've taken, and I think all of us are very proud of what you've said there, and that's what all of us,
No, if I may, 1 minute interject. So during my tenure, the Raksha Mantri came, Mr. Anthony. So 3 days he was there. I showed him, and I was very honest. I said, "You've failed." I told him in those. I used the word "you've failed." I said, "We can fight the war. When have we let you down, sir?" I said, "But you have to support us to fight the war." I said, "We know how to fight the war, but you need to support." So when he got into the Hepta, the rotor started, the Hepta stopped, the door opened, and he was with General Deepak Kapoor. He got down. I thought the Hepta was having a problem. He got down. He shook my hand. He said, "General, I've just got down to say something to you." So I thought probably, he will say that, you're a useless guy. He just said one word. He said, "General, I've never met a more frank general than you during my RM's tenure." Those were the parting words when he left from that place.
Great, sir. So we are almost out of time. So we have 5 minutes more. So I want to get to the final question, which will be answered in about a minute or maximum minute and a half by each one of our elite speakers today. Okay. So the question is, of course, starting with Colonel Sidhu, because he is the author of the book. And you have spoken in your book about veteran support organizations in the US. How can we bring about a favorable change in the perception of veterans in the eyes and minds of the corporate sector in India, and also attract investment for their businesses? So my request is, speakers, please just talk straight about the idea, the core point of the idea, because I think we have overshot the time by a lot.
So I'll just straight away get onto it. I have written in the book that in the US, there are 2.5 million veteran-owned businesses, which is 9% of the overall business of the US, generating $1 trillion in receipt, and giving employment to 6 million employees. And there are roughly around 40,000 veteran support organizations which are supporting the veterans there, either through advice or through guidance or through investments as angel investors, etc. This is a hell of a lot of support which is there. Unfortunately, in our country, it is not so. Till 10 to 15 years back, it was very difficult to come across any major percentage of officers taking to entrepreneurship. This, of course, is now changing. In fact, this book was the first attempt within the country to look at this issue and to highlight the entrepreneurial skills of the veterans. And I am happy that this session is also taking place, where some of the same veterans have been able to put on display the skills which they have, the skills which the veterans are required. And when I interact with the community in the corporate sectors and with the veterans, I find that there is a distinct change which is taking place. There are greater number of veterans who are now looking at taking the entrepreneur route to give employments rather than seeking employments outside. Another aspect which I have looked upon in the book, and I have mentioned about it in passing, is that we should have a Indo-US Veterans Chamber of Commerce. The reason is very specific. The technical skills are there in the US, and the human resource skills are there with the Indian veterans. The moment we marry the two of them, these are unbeatable. And with the Make in India, this initiative which is taking place within the country, this will be a very good step. We can even include the Israelis, who are excellent as far as the technology is concerned. And we have got a large number of weapons and equipment of latest technology, which is coming in from these two countries. So these are the aspects. The another thing is that the current entrepreneurs, they are successful. They are able to be the guides and mentors. That is how we can ensure that the veteran community is able to succeed. As also, in case we have the support of the government, for example, 60% of the defense-related ancillaries in the US are in the hands of the veteran community. I'm sure we can get into this aspect also, and these are what I feel is the issue. And I leave it to the others to add on to whatever I have spoken. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for that, those inputs, Colonel Sidhu. So, Colonel Bana, can we?
Sir, sir, I would, in addition to what Colonel Sidhu has mentioned, quickly I will just say that one is a policy change which has to come in from the government side, whether it is the marriage of US veterans enterprise with Indian. Here, the veterans
Have we lost the audio?
Maybe we can ask Sam now.
Yeah, Sam, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, so everyone is waiting what government should do, what US should do. I said it's time that veterans take charge of themselves. Okay. Please do not wait for others to start. We waited long enough for others to start. Veterans now need to take charge. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. The journey of veterans' contribution to the nation begins with you. It begins with us. It begins with me. Embrace technology. Do things at scale. Think big. Be the change that you want the nation to be. The qualities which led to your success in military life will make you successful as an entrepreneur. So good luck. God bless, and thank you, everyone.
Wonderful, Sam. Colonel Naresh, I think you're muted. So we'll go to General Alotra. Sir, your thoughts.
I just can't disagree with Sam. He is actually, I think you saw what I'd written and you spoke my words. So you cheated me, you know. I just want to second what Sam has said. You know, you require a Tata amongst the veterans. Why are you saying government karega, ye karega, wo karega? You require a Tata amongst us. We have not been able to produce a Tata. We keep saying all these things. If there are 30,000 veterans, I don't know how many thousand are there, but there are 30,000 serving and they become veterans. And if each chap gave 1 lakh rupees, and there's so much money you get, you have 30,000 lakh rupees. Now, if I was to ask this August Guardian, what is 30,000 lakh rupees equivalent to crores, most of us will not be able to do it. That's enough to start anything in the world. 30,000 lakh rupees is good enough to start. You require an idea. What he said, the ancillaries are all in the hands of the thing. You have the capabilities, you have the people, you have the thing. I think we have to just about start. And I think once you throw an idea like this out, people will come forward. You require some honest people to head this organization.
Thank you. Colonel, 30 seconds for you to finish your answer.
Sir, I was basically mentioning that the balance sheet, what everybody has said, we need to understand the power of balance sheet, which is not there with the veteran, which he has to understand to not only make use of it for business building and also for working capital to long-term development. That's my 30 seconds.
Thank you. So, Hemant, I think it will be pretty unfair if we do not take at least 3 questions from the audience. They have stuck with us for 40 minutes. Is that okay?
Definitely. You will take them on?
Let's open it and get questions.
There is only one question which I would say, because everybody is actually saying a great job. General Sharma says, these have been great individual stories of immense merit, great military achievers. However, we have about 1,000 officers, including 100 generals, retire yearly. and little contribution in nation building post-retirement. Nearly 98% do not get the opportunity. And they are across the hill. Question, and talent is wasted. Are we saying to make success, one has to take an early retirement? Why not have Indian Veterans Chambers of Commerce of success assistance, guidance, funded training to that end? This is the only question we'll take.
Sir, 30
Yeah.
seconds.
Yeah.
Question to be answered by question. There is a star quality called tolerance for ambiguity. Anybody who reads the general in last 25 years, what did he get in tolerance for ambiguity? I assume they got 9. So the first thing when you come out in ambiguous environment, if you're asking, then I think I won't say anything. Okay. So nobody is going to give us, we have to kind of create our own path, sir. I think we waited long enough. This will do, that will do. I think we need to take charge. We need to prove that 25 years, our bosses who trusted us, and gave us 9 marks in tolerance for ambiguity, they were right. Let's not let them down.
I'll just add on to it what Sam has said, that as far as passion is concerned, it has got nothing to do with age. In fact, passion should rise with age.
Kentucky Fried Chicken, sir, founder started at 66 years of age, sir. So passion has no age.
Whether you are coming out at the age of 30 years or you are coming out at the age of 60 years, if you follow your passion, there is nothing which can stop you from succeeding.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I left the Navy at the age of 40 years and probably 6 months of choice. And I served in the private sector for 15 years. And I ran a company as the top leader for 5 years. And I was 55, 56 when I started my entrepreneurial journey. And I don't think we are old at 55 at all. And even at 65, God bless, we have the energy and the good health for that.
Okay, that is fine.
Colonel Bana is saying something. Can you please?
Yeah, okay.
One is, I agree with Thampi sir, that there is no age to start a startup or your passion. I have just started a passion care to the rural cattle. And we had discussed that why it was not for the pets which are highly paying and profitable. So that is my passion and I wish to pursue it. And I'm continuing with it. The second part, that when thousands of officers and the senior officers are coming out, one big area where they could have put their nation building efforts is the public sector undertakings at the board level. I have been making my voice wherever I can make it felt, is we have really abdicated that field. The people who are sitting on the board of public sector undertakings are not half the caliber of officers who are superannuating at various levels. Please, whosoever can reach out wherever in the policy making, let's get that back to the veterans who are coming out. There's a huge potential. There, a lot can be done there. Thank you.
I would like to thank all the speakers, our great stars for today, for their wonderful dedication and their answers. And with that, I hand over back to Hemant for the concluding remarks.
Thank you, Raja. It has been the most invigorating session. I will not really say much. What we will do is we'll put a hot wash to today's discussion and put it in writing after about a week or so. And the video should be up on the YouTube in a day or two for other people to take up. From risk to networking to adversity to agility and to algorithms and to mean and lean and asset light and data heavy and the passion and above all ethics and values. I think it is a great thing. The unanswered question remains about these tons and tons of soldiers who are retiring and many, many officers. While individual passions will be there, there has to be some ecosystem must be created. Some exists at the Ministry of Defense level, but it has to be more, just plug and play type of a system. Let's see how it goes. Thank you, everybody, very much. And thank you for the patient listening, the audience. Our next show is on the 6th of November, when we will be talking about the solo adventurists, slow boat down the Ganges. And we will also be talking to General Dogra, who is the first general in the world to be the Iron Man. And he did it at the age of 57. So there lies the answer. And it will be moderated by the Josh Talk girl, Captain Yashika Hatwal. See you on 6th. And thank you, everybody, from the side of Military Literature Festival, Lucknow.